Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J More Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your questions into the comment box and you'll see me turn my head from time to time to check for your questions. Today's guest is Mariko Amekodommo, who in her words is connecting the world through culinary experiences. We are live today from Prague, where Mariko, a world traveler, is hosting culinary experiences that encompasses her time in Hollywood, Vietnam, India, and now Prague. Good evening, Mariko.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Oh, I'm just fine. I'm saying evening because I believe there's a 6 hour time difference.
Yes, it's 5:30 in the evening here.
Okay, not quite evening, so good afternoon then. Thank you for joining us. Other than our show, what else was on your plate today?
Today on my plate was I did a really long walk up to the castle that's behind my house. Living in Prague, I'm surrounded by all these beautiful castles, and we haven't had that much sun lately, so there was some sunshine outside. So I was like, let me just take a walk. And then I have some friends coming over for dinner tonight after the show. I'm going to be making an Indian recipe butter chicken. So I was getting that ready and then just getting ready for your show. This has been weeks in the progress, so I'm just happy to finally to meet you here.
That's great. That's great. I love butter chicken.
Yeah.
It's my favorite. Um, so, can we start at the beginning?
Okay.
All right.
Fire away.
Hollywood. You were known as the pink hair chef, cooking for the likes of Jared Leto, Kristen Dunst, Diddy, David Lynch. Where did your cooking take seed? Were you the one of the numerous college students who paved their way working in restaurants or culinary school? How did you get started in food?
Well, I got started in food by just growing up with my little old Italian grandmother living with us. So she just got me really interested in food. And I was just always fascinated, doing a lot of research at the library, learning about different countries and ingredients. When I went away to university, it was the first time I had money to do some grocery shopping, find, these ingredients that I only read about and discover recipes online. So I started making them for friends. So for me, food just got as a way to learn about something new and try things that I had never tried before and see what my friends had to say about it.
Well, considering all the travel and everything you do, I consider you fearless. I don't think anything scares you. Um, so, when did you decide to become vegan, or are you still vegan? Fill us in.
So I'm not vegan. I do a lot of vegan recipes. I have had times in my past when I was vegan. And after that, I was vegan for a while, started having some health issues, and then I started studying Ayurveda. And in Ayurveda, that's the ancient like Indian science of health and wellness. And so in Ayurveda, they say the foods that are best for you to eat are the foods that you ate when you were a child, when you were growing up. And so growing up, we ate a roast every night for dinner. We did it all. So then I started incorporating more meat products back into my diet. So I tried doing the vegan thing. I do a lot of plant-based baking. I still eat it, but not 100% of the time.
Right. Well, people, before I forget, can find that on your website, which is marikopresents.com. And you have some of the recipes there. There's um, a chocolate ice cream that's avocado, and it looks very tempting. Um, with the Ayurveda, um, it's 3,000 years old, I think Sanskrit,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it breaks it down into body types or doses.
Correct.
Vata, which is space and air, Pitta, which is earth and water, and Kapha, which is fire and water. Which one are you?
I'm Pitta, so I'm fire.
I would have never guessed with that hair. So yeah, I was a picky eater as a child. I didn't eat much of anything, so I'm not sure where I would fit in the Ayurveda thing. Be very limited. I think I'd just be eating spaghetti. That was it, and mac and cheese. Um, so, what you were vegan? What are some of the downfalls that people go becoming vegans fall into? I'm sure there are some traps that, it says vegan, but it has a lot of unhealthy stuff in it. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So in India, like living in India, living, even in Europe, a lot of the vegan products come from whole food, like whole actual grains and vegetables. When I was in the US, a lot of these vegan products have ingredients in them that aren't even allowed in other parts of the world. So I was looking at some of these fake, fake beef burgers, and some of the ingredients you can't even pronounce. So that's not as good for you as if you're eating just some, a little bit of organic meat or things like that. So people eat, vegan for different reasons, but you also need to make sure the source of the vegan foods. For example, I was just reading the study the other day about some of the ingredients in these like vegan snack foods. They have higher amounts of sugar in it. So then what happens is, like, if you're diabetic, you could be getting higher glucose spikes from eating these vegan foods, just because they're adding all this other, not so good ingredients and, really refined sugars. In Ayurveda, it's all about, you can eat meat, you can eat, you can eat all those products. It just needs to come from a good source.
Okay, sort of whole unprocessed sources, right? So, um, I'm curious. Mariko is basically a Japanese name. The Amekodommo. What's the sort? I went looking. I could not find Amekodommos anywhere.
So
I was
there's a story about that. It's actually a print in a magazine, so I'll have to share that with you, and then you can post it. It's an interesting story about my name. But basically, when I grew up as a little girl, my grandfather, he spent a lot of time in Japan during the war, and so he was the only person in the family that had really had time abroad. Like, my family came over from Europe very early on, and never went back. And so he was the one that got me really interested in about learning about other countries, teaching me about Japan in the encyclopedia. And my name was Mary. That was my birth name. And he used to call me his little Mariko, which is a young Mary in Japanese. And then he called me his little Kodomo, which is a sweet child. So after he passed away, I changed my name in, homage to him. But yeah, so I'm an Italian girl with a Japanese name.
That's great. I think Mariko means truth. That's one of the definitions of your name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, somebody's coming on. I start digging in. So yeah. So let's explain to people. You're in Hollywood. You have a very successful career, culinary career, cooking for the stars and writing. But that was not the path that you originally went for a career. And what was that moment like when you went, I'm done with food, and now I'm going to go into corporate finance? You have a PhD in that, an MBA in marketing, and experience in advertising and media, and you walked away from food. So why Vietnam? Was it, we can all telecommunicate Why Vietnam?
Well, I think my thing with food was when I was in Los Angeles working for all those celebrities, I was doing very well. I still had family telling me, you know how traditional families can be. How, oh, you need to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant. What is this whole celebrity chef thing? What is this? You've got a finance degree. You need to be doing a job with that. And so I ended up just putting it out to the universe, and I ended up getting a job working for a finance company in Vietnam. So I think for me, it was a couple things, two parts. One was people around me, family saying, okay, you need to do this. And then the other part was I felt like I had learned everything that I could learn about like food, what I was doing in Los Angeles. I needed to go somewhere else to grow. And so moving to Vietnam gave me the opportunity to do both of those things, work in corporate for a while, and then also be able to really dive deep into food on the other side of the world.
Well, I have
So,
to say I'm jealous because I love Vietnamese food, and it's a dream of mine to go to Vietnam. I had close friends who had a restaurant um, that were Vietnamese, and and I look at the pictures and I just go, this is where I want to be. I think Vietnamese food, and I had said it before, is a very fresh, clean taste as opposed to Thai with a lot of coconut milk, whatever. There's a fondness for Vietnamese. And I know, you have some recipes up on your website, which I'll remind people, which is marikopresents.com, or her Instagram is Mariko Presents. You can find that. I have a question that has come in. How much influence did your family's environment contribute to your love of food? What's your all-time favorite dish?
well, that is a very great question. Thank you. So, 100% everything about my family influenced the way I feel about food. Because, growing up with a big Italian family, everything was centralized around food, the dishes and the history and who's making what. And Christmas wasn't about the presents. Christmas was never about the presents. It was always about the 2 weeks of, getting together, making the cookies, soaking the raisins in the rum for the fruit cakes, all of those things. So for me, everything, in our lives has always been, you know, has to do with food. And so, you mentioned in the beginning that, I say I like to connect the world through culinary experiences, is a lot of the experiences that we have in life from the past and the future, they're all going to be central around food. So funny, here's a story I haven't told anyone yet. I was thinking about it the other day. But my grandma, she used to make these little Italian biscottis, just the classic, little anisey cookies. They're hard to get correct unless you have an old Italian grandma make them. And then one day, and I hadn't had them for years, and I hadn't seen my family in 4.5 years because I was in India, and then pandemic happened, and that's one of the reasons it was hard living in India, being at the height of the pandemic, and not seeing your family for years. But that's another story. So, anyways, so I'm at this little cafe on the beach, and the chef finds out that I used to be a chef, and he says, hey, try these cookies I made. I want you to, want to know what you think of them. And I tried them, and I just broke into tears. Like, it was the exact same taste of the cookies that my grandma made. And it was just, then I had like the last like 40 years of my life, like thinking about the different times I've had these cookies and growing up making these cookies with my grandma, so it's just, it's really powerful how much our connection to food really just plays into our lives.
Absolutely. That sense memory, um, especially being away from your family because of COVID, and to have that taste. brings it all up, and that all the holidays and the people being around the table. Food connects people in so many different ways. And my late father-in-law, God love him, used to make pizzelles, and he'd burn out a pizzelle maker to the next one, and he'd send them all with confectioner's sugar, and nobody makes pizzelles like he did. There's that memory. So I think we have you in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
You are working for a company, learning about the food in Vietnam, but basically doing your corporate work.
Mm-hmm.
How did you end up going to India? You're in Vietnam. What took you to India?
So when I was in India, I was working, or when I was in Vietnam, I was working doing PR for some travel startups, a few government projects. And there was this travel tech conference that I was doing the PR for. And there was this very handsome keynote speaker that was speaking at the conference, and he was from India. So yeah, so I met him, and then we started talking, and there were some other conferences that he was going to be at, that I was going to be at, and after a few times meeting, we were like, let's see how we can make this work. And he had a company in India at the time, so he could have moved to Vietnam. So I was like, okay, let me go check out India for a while. That's how I ended up in India.
What area?
I started out in Mumbai, so I was right there in the chaos of, one of the busiest cities in the world. And then after a year of the pandemic, we decided to move to Goa, which is kind of a little like ocean, like white sandy beaches, like a tourist town, because we wanted to be away from people. So yeah, I was there for about 4.5 years altogether.
And I think you stated that you accidentally started teaching Ayurveda. How do you accidentally start teaching Ayurveda?
So when I was in India, I had a lot of health issues, and I can tell you about those in a second. And I met someone at a club actually, and found out she had an Ayurveda clinic. And then I told her like, oh, I'm kind of having these health ailments. She's like, come to my clinic. She kind of fixed my problems, and then she said, hey, I'm into, I teach these Ayurveda classes, but the most important part of Ayurveda is the food. And people need to learn how to cook Ayurvedic food. Can you teach some classes? So I started teaching some classes in real life. And then the pandemic happened. And so then started teaching all these online Ayurvedic culinary classes. And then during that time, I ended up getting certified as a Ayurvedic educator.
Right. Before I forget, there's a woman in Baltimore, an acquaintance of mine, Susan Weiss Bolin, and she wrote a book called Ayurveda Beginner's Guide, and it's been like this bestseller.
Amazing.
And I just wanted people to let them know, the ones that are here based in Baltimore, anywhere, if you're curious about it, obviously watch the website, but more in depth at this point. It's Ayurveda Beginner's Guide, Seasonal Self-Cure Rituals According to Your Dosa.
Amazing. See, and that's great that you have someone local. And, the thing I want to say about Ayurveda is it's not like a diet. It's not like restrictive. It's basically just kind of what are some of the best practices for your daily life. So for example, when I was talking about I was having some health issues in India. I was having all these things that were wrong. And I found out was my pitta, my dosha, was out of control. And so pitta is fire. And what gives you fire It's going to be hot weather, raw tomatoes, spicy foods, all these things were just giving me more like fire. And when you have too much fire in your body, your hair's falling out, your skin's breaking out, you can't sleep, you're gaining weight, all these things are happening. And so in Ayurveda, you need to just kind of get rid of some of the extra fire in your body. You need to just kind of be balanced. For example, my mom, she's Vata, which means air. And she drinks a lot of carbonated water. You know how everyone drinks these like, flavored sparkle waters? Well, Vata means air. And so when you're drinking sparkle water all day, you're adding more air to your body. So what happens is your hair starts getting kind of thin and falling out. You're very cold all the time. Maybe your like feet are very cold in bed. So what Ayurveda would say is if you've got a lot of air in your body, then you need to have things to kind of, make you a little like heavier. So you would be drinking warm water instead of cold soda water, or, making sure to like, put oils on your body to kind of, keep some of the,
body heat in.
Yeah, exactly. So, Ayurveda is all just about kind of balancing everything out. So you're kind of more balanced.
Right. And just to reemphasize, you tell people on your site to be more diligent about reading the labels and know what they're putting in their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just good common sense. Let's see. So now we're in India.
Mm-hmm.
We leave India and we go to Prague.
Yeah.
And you decide more or less there's that black and white moment that turns color, that aha moment that says, I'm really going to get back into food. So you're in Prague now. I take it your husband's business can operate from Prague at this point. Everything's pretty viral.
Yeah.
What are you doing in Prague culinarily wise? You're back into creating these experiences for people.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing now?
Okay, so right now I am hosting culinary experiences. So I host different themed events at my home, where it's a combination of dinner party and cooking class. So you can't really see here, but this is like my kitchen. And yeah, so we have all these different themes. Tonight after the show, doing an Indian theme. So we're going to make like a healthy version of butter chicken and then a bunch of little snacks. So we're doing that after, and then doing, different Ayurveda cooking classes, doing some like Mexican cooking classes because it isn't done correctly here yet. And then I've also started doing corporate team buildings. So there's a lot of international companies here in Prague. Everyone that you can imagine is here. And so, one thing right now, especially in the corporate world, you've got people that work in the office, you've got people that are remote. So you need to have some experiences that makes it easy for people to kind of get together and do something, learn something.
And interact. Yeah.
And interact, yeah. And so it's amazing what you can do when you have half a group like right here and half online, and give someone a task, play some games. So I've been working on that with different corporates, and then also doing getting back into private chefing again, which is what I used to do for celebrities. Is people are having different events, and instead of going to a restaurant, they'd rather do something intimate at home. So
great.
And one of the things for me being inspired to get back into food again was just the availability of ingredients. And so, just everything here is so fresh, like just the produce, like walking at the farmer's market, you see things you've never seen before. You're there buying, your chicken, your cheeses from the farmers that made it like not too far out of town. So, it's just for me having access to those things again, it was like I have to do this.
Well, you
And then
see it. Yeah, it's like I can't pass up things. I might not be ready to cook it, but it's right there and I'm going to get it and use it and
there's so
make the
many
best.
times, no, so many times I see something and I'm like, I'm buying that. My husband's like, do you even know what that is? And I'm like, no, but I will research and how to do it. And it was funny, like the other day, like I was at the store that's kind of like a European version of Costco.
Okay.
And one of the things living in a foreign country is you're having to go and look at the labels of everything with your like Google Translate, because it's like, what is on this label? So, you can always tell who's the foreigner by who's grocery shopping, like looking in their phone. So I thought I bought some chicken. I thought it was chicken, and they were kind of small chickens, but then it ended up being quail. So there's all these, different, like, you can get like your little birds this big to eat. You can get these big crazy geese to eat. And it's like, and they just look cool and I've never seen them. So I'm like, oh, I want to try this.
Well, I tell you, you say quail, there's a pho restaurant in Baltimore called Pho Van, and they do the best pho, but they have a lacquered quail that they do. So good.
Oh,
Just
that
so
sounds
good.
good.
Yeah, we're going to both be really, really hungry. I don't know about who's listening here, but we're going to be really, really hungry. I saw that you were talking about microgreens and the benefits of those. And a fellow here in Baltimore created a way to grow the microgreens with LED lights and then set the restaurants up with it.
Okay.
So, I went there one day and he made me a salad of the microgreens. Oh, it was so, so good. Oh, you could just taste, because that flavor is so intense in the small little buds and the greens. So good. So I looked at your Instagram and you did a 2022 wrap up. And I just want to tell people this. You wrapped up, you spent 4 months homeless traveling the world. You played tennis in 6 countries. You flew to Bangkok for dinner. And the one thing that flummoxed me is you became an unofficial caviar influencer. I want to know how to do that. How do I become a caviar influencer? Because I love a good caviar.
So, the whole time I was in India, I did not have caviar at all. I had it maybe like once if we were in Bangkok at a restaurant, but it just wasn't accessible. When I was in Los Angeles, I ate it all the time because I would go to the restaurant supply place and, I could always get it at a discount and whatever. So I just always had. Then when I had spent the last year homeless and I'm traveling the world. And so whenever I saw caviar, I would just buy it. Or if I was seeing friends that I hadn't seen before, they're like, oh, here's some caviar. So it was just like so much caviar. And then I would talk about it at restaurants and I had places giving me caviar. And then I was posting about it on social media and people were like, I've never had caviar. Where do I get caviar? So it was just, kind of so much excess caviar in the course of a year that all my friends joke that I became a caviar influencer.
And so I
But
got a kick out of that. Now, I'm a salt freak.
a salt freak.
Yes. So
Okay.
salty foods, love them. They don't love my blood pressure. So I've had to stop with the herring, but caviar, yes, etc. Yep. I want to become one of those. That and a lobster influencer. I'll be good there.
Wait, I'm finding something for you. Wait, hold on. Where is it? It's just in my head right now. Okay. So sorry, I was like digging around. So if you like the caviar, or you're trying to avoid a lot of sodium, a lot of the ocean kelps, those are they're very salty, but the sodium is different. So ask your doctor. But so like one of these things that I like, they're these seaweed, it's called like superfood of the ocean. And it basically like a dehydrated thing of grapes. And then you add it to water and it expands, and they're like,
Okay.
but anyways, so it's that same texture of like caviar, but it's like a seaweed,
Oh,
and
that
it's
sounds good.
salty.
Okay.
I'll send you the link, but these are like you know,
Okay.
when I come to Baltimore, I'll bring you some caviar.
Okay. I know it's high on your list of destinations, Vietnam, Prague, and Baltimore. It's high. I shouldn't knock my city. I've been here for so long. Um, what's on the horizon for Mariko for 2023?
So right now on the horizon for 2023 is just to keep going with the hosting VIP dinner events, like working with corporates. I really, really, really just want to be able to, connect with more people this year and do as much food-based experiences as I can. The next thing I'm really working on right now is to, kind of get in deep with my community. I am here in Prague. I'm planning on being in Czech Republic for quite some time. And so I'm starting to meet with different, farmers, suppliers, just learning about what, everything that I can about food here. And also it's especially important right now because, everything is a little crazy in Europe with the war, and, we need to think about ways to be more sustainable and, cut down our costs. So, just, working with as many people as I can on that. And then and travel. That's kind of the plan for 2023, and just
That's
be
great.
able to, one of the beauties of being in Europe is just it's accessible to go places. So like next month I get to go on my first trip to France. I haven't actually been to France yet. It's kind of embarrassing, but it's about an hour and a half flight. So we're finally going there, and
That's
then just
great.
eat my way through France. I've got some different cooking experiences, like classes and stuff lined up, so I could start to dive deeper into that cuisine as well.
Yeah.
So
Well, let me ask you my final questions. We chatted quite a bit, and I got a funny feeling we could keep talking.
yeah.
Uh, okay. So you've been forewarned. What was your ultimate culinary fail?
My husband's in the background laughing. My ultimate culinary fail was when I moved to India and I was trying to impress his whole family by having them over for an Indian dinner. And I've been able to cook Indian food before, but when you're cooking like catering for 50 people in a tiny kitchen, it was a really hot mess. Things did not come out good. They were like, who is this, foreigner trying to cook Indian food? It was really embarrassing. So that's probably one of my biggest fails.
Well, I tell you, one of the things years ago, I used to run cooking classes in restaurant kitchens before the Food Network. So I would have the chefs over for dinner. Nobody would ever cook for the chefs. They said, nobody cooks for us. If they were Italian, I cooked Asian. If they were Asian, I cooked Italian. I just didn't cook in their cuisine. And I was cool at that point. So, what was the best bite you had all week?
The best bite I had all week was in the mountains, about 2 hours outside of Czech Republic. I went for a ski holiday, and I had this like venison goulash. So it's like a beef stew, and the meat is simmered in beer, and then there's kind of like a spicy red sauce. So it's one of the traditional foods of this side of the world. I haven't had it yet, and it was just, it just like the venison, the deer meat just melted in my mouth, and that was really good.
That sounds good. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't waste your time with the wrong people. Marriages, friendships, if the signs are all there from the beginning, get out.
Okay. I won't delve into that any further, but I
No, it's
understand. If you could wake up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
learning foreign languages easier.
So
Mm,
I see that your website is also in a separate language. That's the Czech language.
yeah.
Yeah. You can do English or Czech. And what didn't I ask you that I should have?
What should, well, I was going to ask you or tell when I saw the questions, what am I having for dinner? But I already told you that I was making butter chicken and doing the whole like Indian smorgasbord for a class after this.
Okay. So, all right.
You
So,
can ask, you haven't asked me what is my favorite food. I think you started to ask that and I didn't answer it.
okay. What is your favorite dish? That was one of the viewers asking.
Okay. Italian rice torta. So it's this recipe my grandma made ever since I was a little child. So think of it as like risotto rice, Parmesan cheese, cream, spinach, and eggs. And it's all just like, put together and put in a baking sheet and baked and cut in slices. So it's basically like, yeah, like cooked rice and cheese, but it's like, oh, it's like my favorite.
It's the Italian version of mac and cheese,
Yeah, actually. Yeah, totally.
right? Sorry.
Yeah.
This makeup I have, for whatever reason, makes my nose run. So every show I'm like doing this. Um, this has been great, Mariko. To remind everybody, Mariko Presents on Instagram, and she's also on Pinterest and on Facebook. And her website will link you to everything, marikopresents.com. I thank you so much. Thanks for visiting us from Prague.
Thank you for
And
having me.
and tell your husband I said hi.
I will. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and I look forward to our next time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Be well. Okay, everyone. Next week's guest is the legendary Coleman Andrews. I'm sorry, I'm eating a hair. Just trying to get it out of my mouth. Coleman Andrews. He's an internationally known food writer and editor, was co-founder and editor-in-chief of Savour magazine and vice president and editorial director of thedailymeal.com. He is the author of 9 works on food, including cookbooks about cuisines of Catalonia and the Italian Riviera, a biography of influential Catalan chef Ferran Adrià, of El Bulli, an appreciation of American food products, and a memoir. My Usual Table and Life in Restaurants. Andrews is the winner of 8 James Beard Awards, including the Cookbook of the Year for 2010, the Country Cooking of Ireland. So that is next week. Jamore Living is hosting its second Aging Gratefully on March 28th from 5 to 7:30 p.m. at the Gordon Center for Performing Arts. A moderated panel discussion with experts on aspects of aging and featuring exhibitors throughout the community. Register online for this free event at jmoreliving.com/aging. You need to register. It is free. If you need to reach me, you can reach me by email, food@jmoreliving.com, or Instagram @Dara Cooks. All shows are immediately archived in video form on JMore's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. Feel free to dig into our video archives of past shows. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. And as I like to end my show, may your plates always remain full. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next Thursday.